expenditure. They used the money to get people to the table to design a better way. And when they did that, of course, everybody wants to come to the table. Hey, somebody else is paying for it. And when they did that, they created a momentum and they created a change. In Saskatchewan, I was part of the Building Partnerships to Reduce Crime. This was signed off last year. It's signed off by Minister of Public Safety and Policing, Ministers of Corrections, all Deputy Ministers, Deputy Minister, Justice Attorney General, Social Services, Immigration, Employment, Education, First Nations, Métis Relations, Health, Municipal Affairs, Tourism, Parks and Culture, and Sport, and every police service in our province. This is our Concordat. This is the overarching document that helps us do some of the things we're doing. Our Premier is championing this, and that's what drives change. I always say, brains get you to here, networking gets you to here, and clout and influence bring change. Bring the right people to the table that can drive the change, as you have that in this room today. Then you can respectfully step on toes to create change. And when I say respectfully to step on toes, if you don't step on toes, nothing will ever change. If you do it disrespectfully, you will get nowhere. So what we asked the Premier when I met with him, I said, you know, Mr. Premier, and I actually get along with him fairly well, I said, you know, we talk about this document that you drafted here, and every year you give each minister their so-called walking papers, if you want to call it, but they all have what their goals and objectives are going to be in the year. And only 2 of those 9 that signed on had community safety on them. So we've asked them to put it on every one of them, because we all know what gets measured gets done. And if we have it as a priority, then somebody at the bureaucratic level will make it a priority, and they will make sure that they are involved in the program and basically drive change. And we're optimistic that's going to happen. So this is what I talk about in a franchise level, and this is why I put the entrepreneurial thing. Think if you were in the franchise business. Think of McDonald's. Think of the McDonald's in Peel. Think of the McDonald's in Singapore. The M is the same. The cooking system is the same. The cooking ware is the same. The software is the same. The accounting, the cash is the same. Everything is the same except the menu. So if you build a framework and a structure that allows you to have a franchise in any community you have, and then you give the menu the ability to change to what's important in the community and or the region, all of a sudden you have a framework that'll work for anything. And that's what we focused on, and I'll get into that in a minute. So maybe franchise isn't the right word. I use that because obviously I have some background in that particular area. But it's all about structure and process. And if you build it once and then you should be able to replicate it, you should be able to put the new McDonald's in wherever you want to go and get the people that you need to help based on what the menu is that you're going to be measured on. So to do that, you have to have a system, and basically it's called an offender matrix. And they did this in Scotland. And what an offender matrix is, it looks like this. Is they import the information from police, social services, and health. Somebody comes up at code red, they need an intervention. They need to be visited before they're actually involved in crime, involved in some of the things that it leads to, because we can predict that. So when they come up the red, they get an intervention. So we've built a system in Saskatchewan that's pretty bizarre. It's pretty neat, actually. Hit a button, just spits it out where we should be focusing our attention. And how we did that is, again, by luck. I'd like to think it was by a stroke of other than luck, but sent my 2 IT guys, the 2 senior IT guys, to the Canadian Police College to train them as analysts. They come back and they build a program that everybody can be an analyst. And it's hit a button and now we're training all of our people. So we know where to focus, because in police work and in all these things, we tend to base it on hunch. What comes on our plate today, and we often overlook all those people that are headed there on a crash course. So now when we take the guesswork out, we build an offender matrix, and then the best part of this is now trying to load health and social services information on those cases we're dealing with. You'll actually tell if the intervention's working, because it's all graphed out. When they receive it, does it help? So, I mean, just adding a little bit of the science to it. So in Scotland, they said they had to change their attitude to hope and desire, frustration, helplessness. They showed us the good, the bad, the ugly. They showed us their scars. It wasn't all pretty. But everybody there was upbeat. They were optimistic that they could make change, because they have 6 years of change under their belt. This is the best one. I like this one because of my business background. is in Scotland, the whole talk was just like Canada. If we just create more jobs, we'll get out of this funk. That's the key to getting out of it, create more jobs. So they did that in Scotland. Guess what? Nobody filled the jobs. We did that in Canada. I moderated a group of entrepreneurs. Over half of them are bringing in immigrant workers to do entry and mid-level jobs. I'm not talking doctors, you know, and specialties. I'm talking fast food, entry-level, mid-level jobs. We're bringing in immigrant workers. So what Scotland said, you know what, we got great readiness to work programs, but they're not connected to the jobs. If we connected those on the onset, that the person went into the readiness to work program and they graduated, they went into a job and they had those connected from day one, they could change the game. Well, they did. 3,673 clients, 1,137 of them in jobs, and basically changed from drawing on the system to contributing to the system. But the best part of that is they said if you do this in isolation as a one-off, you're going to limit your results because you'll be overwhelmed in all the other areas. Great quote, social services and police. We do other people's jobs poorly, but together we can do all jobs well. It's about common goals. It's about best and brightest people. Again, by luck, by accident, whatever. What we did here is I basically pulled in my leading CID investigator, crimes investigator. Could write wire. He's worked on most of the homicides in the last 8 to 10 years in our particular area. He's worked some for the RCMP. He's done internals. He's done it all. I brought him in one day into my office, and I said, you know what? You're very good at solving murders. Now prevent them before they happen. He looks at me sideways like, man, you're crazy. You've really gone off the rocker now. And he's like, he's a 26-year guy, like he's got 12 years services right now because he's out there with all these agencies. He was just in Niagara, actually. And he was, he basically steps on toes because he says, I can tell you right now, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. And when he goes and talks to mums and dads and families that have their blinders on, he talks from real perspective. And they listen to him, and he gets it done. He steps on toes in a respectful manner. And because we did that, we went to health and we went to social services who tried to put people into it that we know because we're a smaller community. And we said we don't want them. We want this one and this one because we want your rock stars. We want the people that'll go in and get it done. Because really that's what it's about. People are our biggest asset. We say it over and over. Don't let territorial leadership get in the way of non-territorial issues. Think of that. Social issues have no boundaries. Why do we try to give them one? You know, that's not our job, that's the police job. That's not our job, that's health's job. That's not our job, it's social services. We push it around because nobody wants to pay the bill. That's wrong. We need to fix the problem and then sort out who pays for it, in my opinion. This is the quote that my IT guy was his favorite. Problems cannot be solved with the same level of thinking that created them. These problems weren't thought of or created by the people that thought of it, but everything's changed. Technology. You know, think of what we've went into. Everything that's changed over the years, but we're still trying the same things. We're almost given a 19th century approach to a lot of the things to 20th century problems, the technology and everything. You know, Wi-Fi, immigration, migration, you add it all up, yet we still do these things. We're very good at parts. Organized crime, you know, all those things, investigating homicides. Our clearance rates in this country are very high. We're very good at it. But what about in the other side? Where can we innovate on the other side with all the agencies and have a better product? And that's kind of where we're going with that. I was at a road builders conference in Saskatchewan about 6 years ago. One of the largest road builders in the U.S. was giving a presentation. He was a very dynamic speaker, and he says, if I ran my business like I did 3 years ago, I wouldn't be in business. Think if that applies to us. Well, it does apply, but we don't change quite as quickly because obviously the measurement's different. So what we formed is a center of responsibility, and I'm going to start getting into the other presentation. We have all these agencies under one roof. They're broke out into two parts, a hub and a core, 24, 48-hour response, the center of responsibility, which is systemic issues. Imagine writing a policy with the person from health, social services, and education sitting down at the table with you, rather than health writing a policy that we actually have to haul prisoners or whatever it means. They're doing it all together, looking at the systemic issues that need to be changed. So before I get into that, Scotland do's and don'ts. They told us we don't have a lot of do's because they change every day, but there's some don'ts. Don't participate in knee-jerk response. In other words, if you have a rash of break-and-enters, don't form a break-and-enter strategy. Because when you get those 5 that commit the break-and-enters, then there's 11 more that are done and the 5 are already out. And when you get those 11, now you got 16, there's 32 more in the system and they're all back out. So they basically said, stay the course, put it all together, look long-term, look at the stuff. Doesn't mean you don't do those things, but have a bigger plan that gets results. And the other thing, I'm sure it was a real bright lady that said this. I can just see the room. They all were around. They're having their first meeting. Police walk in, we're the police. We're not going to share that with you. Health says, we got HIPAA. Sorry, guys, we're out of here. Social services, that's against our code of ethics. We're not going to share that with you. I mean, ridiculous. Some lady, they said, stood up and said, you know what, folks, we're putting our best and brightest people. Why are we trying to write all the policy before we start this? Let's give them a legal framework to operate, make sure they have an MOU so they're from obviously a position that they can be covered off. But if they're our best and brightest people, should we not let them write part of the policy so when they get into the job, the policy doesn't stop them from doing the job? Common sense. So it's exciting. It's proven. It's all evidence-based. I'm not sitting here making this up. I'd like to think I was, but that's not quite the case. All follows the World Health Model. Think about this. 3.5 years ago, as bosses, as people in your work environments, you were told that you were going to lose up to 2/3 of your workforce. You're going to have people dying. You might not be able to get home to see your family. Why? Because H1N1 was coming. What happened? All the agencies got together. They told us how to wash our hands. They told us how to do this. If they do this, we do this. What happened with H1N1? Not a lot. So predictable, preventable. If we can actually see it coming, why do we wait for it to happen and tell what we should do to fix it? So where we are today, we've got a hub, and it's 24, 48-hour response, and I'll get into some examples of that. I'll give you an example. 14-year-old girl comes in, name comes in through education. The hub, there's about 32 people around the hub meeting. They meet every Tuesday and Thursday, 10:30 to 12. No additional resources. This is people committing their people, or organizations committing their people to belong. All an hour and a half, all focused 24, 48-hour response. Education brings a girl in. 14-year-old girl, went from an A student, falling asleep in class, now failing, been listed as a missing person, and they suspect there's addictions issues in the home. Police are there with their MDTs. Wow, we picked that same girl up face down drunk in a snowbank about 2 weeks previous. Probably would have died if somebody from the public didn't phone her. Social services checks their records. They've been at this home 8 times in the last 2 months, 8 interventions. Okay, so what happens? Next morning, phone the young lady up and her mom. We sent a social worker, a police officer, a mental health and addictions worker. She didn't want the school there because she didn't want to be embarrassed, and they went to the home. We noticed you're having trouble. What can we do to help? Kid breaks down crying. Turns out mom breaks down crying. Mom's got in a bad domestic violence relationship in the last 6 months. The guy that she's actually has done serious time in BC. Real bad guy for some serious assaults. The night she's found face down drunk in a snowbank, the mom had a belt around her neck and she thought she was going to be dead. So that's good. We can handle that. So we push that out to the police. Police can do the investigation, the enforcement. We're good at that. Social services come in. They do an emergency intervention order, get some short-term funding for this family. Turns out that mom went to SIAS, the post-secondary institution, and they basically hasn't been there in the last month. She covered it off, got her back into school, got her on her way. Housing came in, changed the locks on the doors, very limited costs. A family that's been in our system 13 times in the course of 2 months hasn't been in our system for 10 months. They're doing fine, and they track them. They do them fine. They're getting it done. Another example, because there are all kinds of examples. We get this call from mental health. It comes into the hub, and they've got this landlord that's phoned and said, he rents a place. He's been renting for the last 2.5 years for this individual, an elderly individual. He's never seen the guy. So he's a tenant, he's a landlord. He's never seen his tenant. Rent is paid up. When do you think the landlord makes his call? When he stops paying his rent. Absolutely, when he stops paying his rent. So they pay it. He gives the story to mental health. This guy never does. I go to the door usually. He sticks the check under the door. I never see him. Okay, there's some issues there. Those are issues, right? Mental health now. So police officer, mental health, social worker go to the door, knock on the door, and this fella opens the door and runs into the closet. This is a true story. Again, I'm not making this stuff up. Everybody thinks it's weird. So they go in there. There's garbage all over the home, but neatly packed. There's fast food containers from a Chinese restaurant that are stacked up, one of our local restaurants, all the way to the roof. Guy's in the closet. Looks like Gilligan. Got a beard down to here. Toes are curled up. End of the day, the first thing he says to him, "What took you so long?" True story. Mental health issues, no family. End of the day, got him into the emergency ward, got him fixed up, put him into mental health. and is now doing fine.